Welcome back to the show where we spotlight Bionicle mocks from across the community to give you some inspiration. Now we're going to focus today on Makuta mocks, specifically creations that are like a revamp of a classic Bionicle set. Although I did throw in one that isn't a revamp of a classic set, but it's nice to have something different every now and then. So let's dive in and get some inspiration. The first mock we've got today is by Powjump, and this is Nivork. So, of course, this mock is a revamp of the classic Metru Nui era set 8621, Turaga Doom, and Nivork. Now, this version, though, is removing Doom, because he was riding in the chest of Nivork, which was always a really, surprisingly cute play feature. So now this revamp is just the Nivork bird. Which, yeah, Nivork was more of a Rahi character than an actual, Makuta, but they did serve Makuta pterodax. You know, they weren't a part of the actual Makuta species, but I think they still count. I just have to do the nerdy glasses moment, as I was well, technically, actually, they're not a Makuta. Bionicle lore. Anyway, this is quite a lovely revamp. There's a really cool hunched overhead design and more dynamic angles to the armor and the limbs that I think makes this feel so much more vulture-like. And because of that, it's so much more sinister and fitting for a villain character. Now, the original set had its own sinister look to it, but I think this revamp really captures the essence of the character and makes it look so much more realistic and more terrifying, which just works. This enhanced wing design, though, is probably my favorite addition. You know, the fact that they can fold up or flare out, the amount of posability they have is just electric, and it definitely is an improvement on the original set, because the original set was more of a play feature for the wings. They just folded together or flared out. But at least on this revamp here, you really get the sense that they could actually be used as weapons, and it makes sense given that it's using actual blade pieces for those individual feathers on the wing. But something else that looks really good is this beak design. They've continued elements of the original beak here. So the original had that silver Onawa claw piece, which of course has those 3 spikes coming out of it. But then on the beak on the revamp, they've continued that 3-spike look, but narrowed the design so that it looks a lot more like an actual bird's beak. That's such a great way to not only reimagine the original, but pay homage to the original. I like that. A phenomenal mock. Let's move over now to Makuta pterodax, a revamp of Makuta pterodax, and this is built by Frenezj. Now, what a great way to breathe some new life into Makuta pterodax. When we compare the two, the original and the mock, we can see that the original set was a little bit stockier. It had a kind of big, wide shoulder design. And then the torso there, it's a little bit blocky around the waist because it's got those 2 large Technic beam pieces right there on display at the front. It's maybe not the best look, those beams there, but it's sort of a sign of the times because this was a bit of an earlier Bionicle set. But this revamp removes some of those more stocky or blocky designs and focuses on a more, sleek and organic and armored look. And it does look very lovely. This digitigrade leg design and then the armored up torso using a lot more of these gunmetal Technic panel pieces. It's also cohesive and well-rounded and very unified. Nothing looks out of place here. It's just a very strong, consistent overall design that works really, really well. But this sleek and organic look, it was still very present on the original set as well. Yeah, we can see a multitude of smooth textures like these Rakshi spines on the legs, and then there's also one on the top of the torso there too. We combine that with the Nuva shoulders and the Nuva torso pieces that make up this shoulder design on the original set. He was a very sleek looking boy. And then this revamp so elegantly continues this original look, but it continues it across the entirety of the build. You know, often modern revamps of classic Bionicle characters, they lean very heavily into CCBS pieces and other modern pieces and modern techniques. And it looks great with the way they reimagine it, but it very much has a new, modern, updated style to it. And the original textures and designs and the original charm of the classic set, some of that can get a little lost. I mean, heck, we saw that on the Nivork mock before. I love this revamp, but you can make an argument that the original look, the robotic design, and the charm of that original set, some of that's no longer present. It's up to you if that's a good or bad thing. I don't mind it. I think it's a great revamp. But still, some people really like the charm of the original Bionicle sets, the robotic look that they had, the very Technic-heavy designs. So it's lovely to see a revamp that still keeps that same level of charm and the same kind of look as the original set, but updates it and reimagines it at the same time. To me, that's kind of the definition of a good revamp. Up next, we have a mock by Shadrack, and this is Makuta Forge Master. So here's the mock that wasn't the revamp of a classic set, but, you know, there's all sorts of good techniques on this, so there's still a lot we can learn about building Makuta just from taking a look at this, so something a little different now. Now, first off, the idea of a Forge Master that works for the Makuta. That's such a good idea. Yeah, making a unique character like this, and they can be the guy that makes the masks and maybe even some of the weapons for the Makuta. I love that, and honestly, it's a concept I don't think I've ever really seen before, but it seems to just fit into the lore very nicely. Gotta love an original idea like that. So the big old hammer design, it's the perfect weapon for a blacksmith type character. Obviously it could be used in their work, but it could also be used to, whack around some toa, so it works. This smooth and sleek angular design on this dude, it really gives off a sense of like danger and ruthlessness. Especially that head design, the sharper angles along the top of the head, it makes for a wonderfully sinister head design. And then that CCBS armor shell that's kind of like a face plate around the mouth area, kind of reminds me of qualities of like a bull. It even kind of looks a little bit like a bull's face, which to me sort of evokes elements of being like stubborn or full of rage, so it's just perfect for a villain. I also adore this band of spikes along the top of the shoulder. So it's using that flexible ammo belt piece that also appeared on Breakout Rocker. You can see it up the back there. It's got a bunch of spears attached to it. It's a really cool piece. But using that and then attaching a bunch of spikes all along it and just sort of wrapping it around the shoulder. That's genius. That's the perfect little subtle touch just to add the right amount of delicious evilness to the build. Oh, and then this workbench with all these masks on it, that's great. Anytime you can add some additional accessory or some other item or a little kind of playset thing to go with it, just to breathe a little bit more context and life into the build, it always looks cool. And how nice is it just to see those masks on display like that? That could also just be a great way to display some of your masks, is build a character that kind of goes along with it, and on their workbench you can put your rarer masks and stuff. I love that idea. And this is very well executed. Such a good build. Now we go to a mock by Forge of Ataka, and this is Icarax. What an insanely cool custom mask. Those devil horns, this almost skull-like area around the mouth. It looks sick. And I love the fact that they've also given them a custom mask because, when we look at the original version of Icarax, they just used Makuta's mask. And I remember as a kid, I always thought it would have been better if they had actually given him a different mask. So it's a really welcome addition here to see one. But if you really do prefer that original mask, there's a couple shots here where they are wearing it and they still look pretty cool. So there's a brilliant spiky look to this character. They use some of these Stronius armor pieces. You can see it scattered all throughout the wonderful set Stronius. But those armor pieces have been attached onto the shoulders here, and they just rock. They naturally have such a cool spiky look to them, and they complement the spikes that we see on the arm and then also on the upper legs in a very, very nice way. And it makes it very consistent that there's spikes all across this mock. Now, I think this build has three great things going on for it, by the way. The first one being silhouette, then palette, and then exaggeration. So to break those three down, the silhouette of this looks great. It's got spikes all over, there's the wings on the back, there's these big bulky shoulders. They just look awesome. The silhouette of it is perfect. Then we go into color palette. It's perfect for a villain. Blood red and a sinister dark black color scheme. It just screams evil and horror, and it evokes elements of like darkness and shadow and blood. Then finally we've got exaggeration. So what do I mean by exaggeration? It's the idea of like getting specific characteristics to purposefully evoke like an emotional or physical or psychological response in someone. So, he's got a scary mask, he's got spikes all over, evil green eyes. All of that evokes elements of fear, right? It's scary looking. It's imposing. So finding ways of exaggerating that, it makes for good character design. And they've certainly exaggerated a lot of these evil qualities here, and it makes the build shine. So when you're building a villain character, or a Makuta in this sense, don't be afraid to make them a bit of an exaggeration or make them a little bit more over the top, because it's perfectly fitting for these types of characters. But yeah, man, this is a great revamp of Icarax. I love what they've done. So there you go, that was 4 different Makuta mocks. Hopefully they give you some inspiration, and if you're looking at building a future Makuta, maybe some of these ideas can get you started and get those creative juices flowing. Now, did you look at these Makuta mocks and you were like, man, I wish I could see the other builds that these builders have built? Well, you can. Check the links in the description below and you can see all the other stuff that they've made, and maybe you could give them a follow, go comment on their stuff, leave a like, all of that. I'm sure they'd very much appreciate it, and they very much deserve it. They're good builders. You should give them some love. Also in the description below are links to my own social media, so you can see stuff that I've got going on over there. And if you were like, I could build good mocks too, I should be on this show, well, you can. You can submit them to the submission email that's currently on your screen right now. Send me whatever you think is important in that email, send it my way, and then I'll do my best to feature it in a future episode of the show. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Also, I've been sick the last few days, so that's why there hasn't been as many uploaded videos of late, so apologies for that. I'm going to do my best to continue those daily uploads, but while I'm still recovering from this sickness, that may not be as easy. So I'll build back up into that and manage those daily uploads as much as I can. It is a busier time at the moment, unfortunately, but I'll do the best I can. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. Love you tons. Bye.